There is a question at the heart of every great con in history. It's not how did they do it. It's why did the victim let them? Because here's the uncomfortable truth about fraud. The con artist rarely outsmarts you. They persuade you to outsmart yourself. They find the thing you want so badly you've stopped asking questions. A return on your investment. A bargain too good to pass up. Official confirmation that everything is legitimate. And they hold that thing just out of reach, until you reach for it yourself. Today we're looking at 6 of history's most audacious con artists. Men who sold things they didn't own, invented countries that didn't exist, printed bonds for governments that had never been formed. These aren't cautionary tales about stupidity. The victims of these men included government officials, Wall Street investors, Ivy League lawyers, and experienced business people. These are cautionary tales about human nature, and once you understand the pattern, you'll see it running everywhere. Paris, 1925. The Eiffel Tower is 36 years old and, according to the French press, falling apart. Maintenance costs are enormous. There have been genuine public discussions about whether to demolish it. A man named Victor Lustig reads these articles, and he has an idea. Lustig, born in Bohemia, fluent in 5 languages, with a criminal record across 3 countries, checks into the Hôtel de Crillon, one of Paris's most prestigious addresses. He has fake government stationery printed. He invites 6 of Paris's top scrap metal dealers to a confidential meeting. He tells them he is a deputy director general of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He tells them the government has decided, quietly, to avoid public uproar, to demolish the Eiffel Tower and sell the metal as scrap. He needs competitive bids. The matter is strictly confidential. They must tell no one. The dealers don't question the venue, the stationery, or his authority. They submit bids. Lustig picks the most gullible, a dealer named André Poisson, and tells him privately that the project is real, but there's a complication. As a government official, Lustig's salary is insufficient for a man of his position. A private consideration would be appreciated. Poisson pays the bribe. It makes the whole thing feel more real. Corrupt officials asking for kickbacks. That's how government works. It confirmed everything. Poisson hands over the money. Lustig pockets it and takes a train to Vienna. When Poisson realized he'd been conned, he was too embarrassed to go to the police. A successful businessman, humiliated. So Lustig came back to Paris. Ran the exact same con on a different set of dealers. The second time, someone did go to the police. Lustig was already in America. He spent the rest of his career running cons across the United States. Eventually arrested in 1935 for counterfeiting. At Alcatraz, where he finished his sentence, guards noted he was one of the most disciplined and charming inmates they had ever encountered. If Lustig was history's most elegant con artist, George Parker was its most prolific. Between approximately 1883 and 1928, Parker sold the Brooklyn Bridge so many times, some estimates say twice a week, that New York police became accustomed to finding confused immigrants and tourists at the bridge entrance with lumber and fencing, ready to begin charging tolls. Parker's method was straightforward. He would pose as the bridge's owner or the representative of its original builders. He would produce documents, many forged, some seemingly legitimate, proving his claim. He would offer the bridge at a discount, citing a need for quick cash. He was charming, well-dressed, and plausible. He also sold Madison Square Garden, the Statue of Liberty, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Grant's tomb. He was arrested and convicted 3 times, each time released. His 4th conviction, in 1928, finally sent him to Sing Sing prison. Fellow inmates reportedly loved him. He would regale them with tales of his sales, and the guards would come and listen. He died in Sing Sing in 1936, reportedly still charming everyone around him. His legacy, "Don't buy the Brooklyn Bridge," became an American expression for not being taken in by an obvious scam. A man who never owned a single thing he sold is remembered in the language. This is the one that makes everything else look small. In 1820, A Scottish soldier named Gregor MacGregor arrived in London from Central America. He was handsome. He had a military title, Brigadier General, apparently earned during the South American Independence Wars. He had a uniform, medals, and an air of complete authority. And he had a story. He announced, the cacique, the sovereign ruler, of a country called Poyais. Located on the coast of modern-day Honduras, Poyais was a paradise. Fertile land, a fine natural harbor, a thriving capital city called St. Joseph. It had banks, a cathedral, a government, a military, and a currency. McGregor had maps printed. He published a 355-page guidebook to Poyais. He issued Poyasian land grants and bonds. He gave interviews. He held receptions at his townhouse. Scottish and English investors poured money in. The Poyasian dollar was listed, briefly, as a tradable currency in London. In 1823, 2 ships sailed from Scotland carrying 250 settlers. Farmers, tradespeople, a banker, a schoolteacher. People who had sold everything, cashed in savings, bought land grants. To start a new life in paradise. They arrived at the Honduran coast to find dense, malarial jungle. No city, no cathedral, no government, no Poyais. Roughly 180 of the 250 settlers died from disease and starvation before rescue ships arrived. McGregor was never successfully convicted. He eventually moved to Venezuela, where, displaying a commitment to his own mythology, he received a Venezuelan military pension until his death in 1845. Poyais never existed. 250 people sailed to a country that existed only in one man's audacity and other people's hope. Joseph Yellow Kid, while operated in Chicago between roughly 1900 and 1940. He wasn't a single con legend like Lustig or McGregor. He was a craftsman, the man who systematized the long con. His preferred method became the template for nearly every large-scale fraud that followed him, the big store. Here's how it worked. Weil would identify a wealthy target, usually someone with money and a desire for more. He'd engineer a chance meeting. He'd introduce the mark to a fake brokerage, a fake boxing match, a fake horse race. Everything was staged. The venue, the other participants, the initial small win. That convinced the mark the scheme was real. The mark would invest. The mark would win. The mark would invest more. Then everything would collapse, and the loss would be structured so that reporting it to police would expose the mark's own participation in what they thought was an insider deal or an illegal operation. Weil understood something essential. The best marks are the ones who think. They're the ones doing the cheating. He was convicted multiple times, served prison sentences, and published his autobiography at age 72, listing his lifetime earnings from fraud at $8 million. He lived to 100. He gave his last press interview at 99. He expressed no regret, only occasional mild embarrassment at some of the more obviously clumsy cons from his early career. You may know this story from Steven Spielberg's 2002 film, but the historical record is more interesting than the movie. Between roughly 1964 and 1969, Frank Abagnale, who dropped out of school at 16, successfully impersonated a Pan Am airline pilot for 2 years, a Georgia doctor for nearly a year, and a Louisiana attorney long enough to pass the bar exam on his 3rd attempt. He cashed an estimated $2.5 million in fraudulent checks across 26 countries. How? Not through sophisticated document forgery, though he was skilled at that. Primarily through confidence. The Pan Am uniform was legally purchased from a uniform supplier. His pilot's ID was a modified real ID. He understood that people see the uniform before they see the person. They confirm what they expect to see. A man in a pilot's uniform walking through an airport is a pilot. Nobody asks. He was caught in France in 1969, extradited to the United States, and eventually, after serving prison time, recruited by the FBI to help train agents in detecting fraud and document forgery. He spent decades as a fraud consultant. He has been celebrated as a reformed criminal turned crime fighter. His story has been the subject of significant scrutiny in recent years, with investigators questioning whether some elements of his autobiography are themselves an elaboration. A con artist whose most successful long con may be the story of being a con artist. In 1919, a Boston businessman named Charles Ponzi discovered that international reply coupons, small postal vouchers used to prepay international postage, could theoretically be purchased cheaply in one country and redeemed at a profit in another. The arbitrage opportunity was real. The scale he claimed to be operating at was not. Ponzi told investors he could deliver 50% returns in 90 days, 100% in 180 days. Early investors were paid exactly what he promised, using money from newer investors. Word spread. Money flooded in. At his peak in 1920, Ponzi was taking in $250,000 per day, roughly $3.5 million in today's terms. Daily. The entire structure required constantly accelerating inflows to pay existing investors. It was always going to collapse. The only question was when. The collapse came in August 1920, triggered by a Boston Post investigation that found the postal coupon arbitrage was mathematically impossible at the scale Ponzi claimed. When the accounting was complete, investors had lost approximately $20 million. Ponzi was convicted of mail fraud and served time in both federal and state prison. He was deported to Italy in 1934, spent years in South America, and died penniless in a Brazilian charity ward in 1949. His name is now a permanent entry in the financial dictionary. Every Ponzi scheme you've ever heard of, Madoff, Stanford, countless others, follows the same mechanics he didn't invent but made famous. 6 con artists. 6 wildly different methods. 6 different centuries and countries, but the same psychological architecture underneath every single one. First, manufactured authority. Lustig had government stationery. McGregor had a uniform, a title, and a 355-page guidebook. Ponzi had a seemingly real arbitrage opportunity. Abagnale had a uniform. Authority short-circuits skepticism. When something looks official, we stop checking. Second, the offer that seems too good to refuse, but just plausible enough to believe. Nobody sells you 100% returns if they're obvious. They sell you 50%. Nobody offers the Eiffel Tower for nothing. They offer it below market, with a reason. The offer has to be within the range of what you can convince yourself is real. Third, urgency and secrecy. The deal is only available now. You mustn't tell anyone. It's confidential. Act quickly or lose it. Both urgency and secrecy prevent you from doing the one thing that would protect you, asking someone else. And fourth, the most important, the Mark's own participation. In Weil's cons, the Mark believed they were cheating the system. Poisson paid a bribe because corrupt officials felt familiar. Ponzi's investors knew that 50% returns weren't normal, and they didn't care. The con works when the victim helps build it. Victor Lustig, George Parker, Gregor MacGregor, Joseph Weil, Frank Abagnale, Charles Ponzi. None of them invented anything. They identified something that already existed. In every society, in every era, and they used it. The desire to believe the offer is real. The willingness to stop asking questions when the answer might be disappointing. The assumption that authority confirms legitimacy. These mechanisms are not historical curiosities. They are running right now. In investment platforms. In email inboxes. In social media. In every offer that seems just plausible enough and just urgent enough. And comes from just the right-looking source. The con artists change. The con does not. The best protection isn't skepticism about strangers. It's skepticism about the thing you most want to believe.